Morning, everybody. Welcome to Throw Grabbers number 8. Happy Labor Day to everybody. It's always nice to celebrate the worker. Often we take that for granted and don't really recognize the sacrifice most laborers make. Today I'm going to show you some softer throw grabbers and a few up-tempo ones as well. But a lot of it's going to be from some of those records I got in the last month or so. Stuff I've been kind of jotting down, like, hey, let's do this one. So I got some fun stuff today. I'm excited about it. I appreciate all of you guys' support. Let's just dive right in. First thing I want to show you is Ben Webster. I've listened to a lot of Ben lately, and that breathy, soft, lyrical, grandpa's telling you a story tone of his, it's just dream-worthy. I want to start by showing you the intro to this number. It's just... oh, that... man. Watch, again. It's just gorgeous. Ooh, a little half step there. It's just got a feel, man. And this is actually a Verve number 8130. I haven't labeled it yet, so it's fairly early. Probably 55, 56. Ben's such a great player. And not everyone sounds great with strings. Some guys can kill it. Other guys sound canned and sterile. But Webster's just a guy. He's one of those guys that doesn't matter what kind of chains you put on him, he finds freedom. You know, he's truly one of the great players of this music of all time. Of all time. You can't go wrong with a Ben Webster record, period. He's right there after Coleman Hawkins in terms of the lyrical nature of the saxophone and helping define the instrument, bringing it to the masses. I think there's a lot of jazz seekers out there who are looking for a sound and don't know where to find it, and we get misled so much. And I can tell you that for 75% of us, Ben Webster is actually the jazz we're trying to find. It's melancholy, it's moody, it's great with a cup of coffee, it's great with a glass of wine. It's got a diversity, a real cultured sadness and sorrow expresses throughout it. Ben is such a giant. The second song I want to show you, I'm actually going to show you two versions of it, which I don't normally do. But the first version he's going to do here on this record from 55. We're going to skip ahead to it. There is no greater love. And it's just done. Choke, throat. You get, listen to that breathiness. Like, it's melancholia. And this is actually one of the greatest records I've ever heard with strings. It's just as breathy and dreamscape, and it's got this wonderful resolution to it. That in spite of it all, we're gonna make do. You know what I mean? And on a day like today, Labor Day, it's inspiring to hear a guy who's had it a lot tougher than me say, I'm gonna get by. And I found this version is fantastic. And I'm not sure if this is one of Ben Webster's go-to songs, but I also got this Ben Webster record last month, Black Lion, a recording out of the United Kingdom, and he does the same song on there. And I actually chose this one first. And this one's recorded decades later. Man. But here's a different version. No strings now. With a soft jazz ensemble going. That throatiness in his tone, it just washes over me and takes me places. I think this was recorded in the late 60s. 1965, in the fall of 65. It's actually recorded in Copenhagen. Black Line's a British label, if I recall. And so it's always interesting to hear a guy play the same song decades later. 55, 65. And if anything, his maturity's even increased. And he's playing it now with, like I said, more of a jazzier version with a lot of the greats of the Copenhagen scene. Niels Henning Orsted Pedersen, Alex Riel, Arnved Meyer, Ole Kongstedt on the tenor set, Ole Kongstedt, Niels Jorgenstein, Hugo Rasmussen, Henrik Hartmann, Hans Niemann, but Kenny Drew's on the piano. And Kenny and Ben played together in Europe quite a lot from what I understand. It's gorgeous. What can you say? What can you say? It's just exactly what the doctor called for. Another record I just came across is this fantastic record here. It's Ronald Bright, a piano player most don't know too much about. Turns out he's still alive today at 90 years of old age. And I'd passed on it a couple times. It always goes for pretty good money. And it's got Kenny Burrell on it. The delicacy of jazz at times, as it spider webs the silky Ronell. He's a great player. He really is. And he does some good side work. He doesn't have a lot of stuff as a leader. I finally got the record, and I listened to it probably 3 times. I just so enjoyed the atmosphere. It's a trio setting, just bass, guitar, and piano. And the bass player is Leonard Gaskin, who's a name of Burrell. Burrell has this ability to be incredibly breathy as well. I gotta fix that needle. It's warped. It's getting weaker. Kenny Burrell has the same ability as Ben Webster on the guitar to be very wispy and dreamy and just soundscape. And this is the track If I'm Lucky. And it's got some of the same melody as I Left My Heart in San Francisco, which is what I thought it was at first. I was like, I'm not singing along to it, but it's If I'm Lucky. Written by Myro and Delange, who I'm not familiar who that is. The whole record is gorgeous. It's on the Regent label, which is a sister label of Savoy. And they initially bought them out, Lubinsky bought out Regent in the late 40s. And they kind of left them as separate entities. But by the late 50s, it was a purely Savoy side entity. And by 60-40, 60-50, the titles on Regent are outstanding. Earlier stuff can be a real mix of stuff, but the later stuff's just gorgeous and very jazz dominated. Whereas like 60-24 is Polka Party, 60-23 is Accordion Antics. So there's some stuff early in the 6000 series here that's not just jazz. There is some jazz early on. Joe Williams. There's a Phil Urso record early on. But the jazz titles that I have found on Regent are outstanding. They're very honest. Just beautiful, you know, and beautiful cover. It's exactly what I need some days. Another record I'm a big fan of, another plant I'm a big fan of, is the fantastic Doug Watkins. He's a very unheralded bass player that probably deserves a little more recognition than he gets. He passed away rather young, which never helps these guys. Listen to his bass playing here. He carries the melody. It's a throat grabber. He's just sitting there plucking away at the stars. And it's that kind of dreamscape sound that this episode is going to feature a lot of. He's playing the cello on some of this, it looks like. And Yusef Lateef is also featured on this record quite a lot. Great record, tough to come by. Even the status pressing of this will fetch $50, $100. But Lex Humphreys, Herman Wright, Hugh Lawson round with the rhythm section. But listen to him playing that cello. And there's Yusef. And there comes that swing, man. And this track, of course, is called Andre's Bag. And who Andre is, I'm not really sure. But this track alone makes this record worth the price of admission. A record I also got recently for my birthday is just one of the most pleasant records I've heard in a long time. Is this record here by Marlene Van Plank.
I think of you
and
every breath I take.
And the beauty of this record,
Every breath becomes a sigh.
her voice is great, but it's Joe Wilder on the trumpet that repeatedly knocks my teeth out. Knocks my teeth out. And if I remember Wendell Marshall, Hank Jones, Herbie Mann shows up, courtesy of Bethlehem. Wendell Marshall, Kenny Clark, Joe Wilder, Herbie Mann are the band. And wait to hear Joe Wilder. You know, it's I can't tell you how jazz can touch me at times. It just connects with me and says things that pop, even words and vocal, nothing else can really do what jazz can for me at times. Her voice is beautiful there, that little step. Woo! See, now that's Joe Wilder. It's the lonesome wolf howling in the night. Man does some great stuff on this. Hank Jones does some great stuff on this. But it's Joe Wilder that throughout the record knocks my socks off. And that goes back to the Black Church right there. The reverend, the leader of praise and worship, singing, and the choir kind of echoing, that call and response. The way the trumpet's echoing her voice and confirming her sorrow, her desperation. The trumpet's accentuating that and giving you a more guttural feel than her voice does. And her voice is carrying some emotion. She's a fine singer. You don't know much about Marlene Van Plank. She's a white gal that Lubinsky signed up. I believe her husband does some work on Savoy as well as a piano player. Tough record to find. But Joe Wilder, who has a couple of great records at Columbia that are easy to find, and Wilder has a record on Savoy probably about the same year. So this is 12,058. I bet you Wilder's record's like 12,064 in there somewhere. It's one of the best Savoy album covers too, is that Joe Wilder record. Listen to Wilder though. That's storytelling. That's what jazz is about. It's about making you feel, making you connect with the emotion that I'm trying to express. And Marlene does a nice job of that, but Wilder really, really drives it home. I'm going to show you a bit of this track as well. This is track number 3. Snuggled on Your Shoulder. And it's got a nice, skips along. Happy. Indeed I am. You know that's the truth. Hank Jones is just a lyrical tree. Hank Jones right there. These kind of records are fun. When you find something that you don't really see people post or know much about, it turns out to be a great treasure. Wilder. Wilder's one of those cats that is a sideman on hundreds of records. He played for the Stars, for Legends, yet his name doesn't really have a ring to it. Most people don't know the name Joe Wilder, which is truly sad. He's truly one of the greats of not just the trumpet, but of emoting the blues. That trumpet doesn't feel like it's a separate entity from him. It feels like it's an extension of him. There's such a direct relationship between his soul and what he's feeling. It comes out so effortless and natural and fluent. It's not forced. It's not thought out. It's not trying to be innovative and brilliant. It's just telling you how he fucking feels. He doesn't need to reinvent the wheel to get you there. See what I'm saying? And that's part of the beauty of what jazz before the avant-garde era was, is it didn't have to think about how can I be innovative and new and different. How can I change what my grandpa did? I don't want to be like that last generation. I need to be new and different. And they lost some of that emoting nature. That direct, soulful expression of Wilder, that's what jazz is about. It's when it just kicks you in the gut and you go, oh, Hank Jones. It's a treasure. This record was a real pleasant surprise. I saw a white gal singing on Savoy. I was like, oh, I'm not sure. It's why I hadn't gotten to this point, to be honest. But then when you see who the band was, Hank Jones, Wendell Marshall, Herbie Mann, and Joe Wilder, I'm like, it's got to be okay. You know what I mean? It's got to be good. And like I said, I've enjoyed it probably three listens worth already. The other night I sat up just kind of down here by myself, soaking this record in. And even like the first song on side 2, If I Love Again.
We don't need the thrumming of a harp's sweet tone.
Now, we're moving along here to the fantastic Count Basie. And this is a record on Impulse, early on, number 15, I believe, A15. And this is a pretty easy record to find. And all these record people out here who want all those fantastic avant-garde and edgy-ass Impulse Records will pass this over all day long, and yet this is the Black Experience. It's coy, it's cheeky, it's the blues, it's sensual, it's flirtatious, it's a little bit deceptive. If I gotta tell you a bit of a long tale, honey, I will. See what I'm saying? That's the fantastic Eric Dixon. And we featured Dixon last Throat Grabbers. I can't remember what record it was, but he was a sideman on someone's record. And I didn't really even know who he was. Turns out he's the guy who played with Basie, of course. And so I'm listening to this record, I'm like, oh, that clarinet, that bass, is a bass clarinet? I was like, who the hell is that? Eric Dixon. And Frank Foster's on this, he's outstanding. Frank West is on this. Ed Jones, Freddie Green. That's Basie playing the organ. And he's putting some church potato salad inside your tambourine. See what I'm saying? You need to wash your hands when you're done with this track because it's gooey. And he's just putting that syrup honey down there for you to soak up and lap it up. And then Thad Jones comes in. And he forgot to bring his hat, his bowler hat for the mute. So he uses a Harmon mute. And the entire... the gospel coming down. This is so from the church. It's Frank Foster right there. Just incredible. Just incredible. Again, this is what jazz is about. It's not meant to scare your neighbors away. It's meant to lure them in. And this music is so enticing. It's so beautiful. And the talent on this record, it's top of the mark. Man. And like I said, people pass up that record. Impulse number 15. And people are like, oh no, I'm looking for Archie Shepp. And you'd rather pay $75 for Archie Shepp than pay $6 for Count Basie teaching you what the blues sounds like and looks like. And it's not our fault. We're misled by the industry. You know, we don't get it. But I'm here to tell you, this is the jazz that matters. This is the jazz. Woo! Come on now, sing for me, brother. Can I get me an amen? See what I'm saying? That's the gospel of the blues right there. And that dirt road, there's going to be a feast at the end of this trail. Trust me, it's going to be worth it. They're going to make some beans and some grits and some ribs that you ain't going to ever forget. Pinky Winters was a record I looked for years. And I finally tracked down a Spanish fresh sound version for a decent price. And I was so impressed by this record. It goes for thousands of dollars, old pressings, which was never going to be in my realm at this point. And I like my wife, so I'm not going to buy no record for $1,000 anytime soon. It was such a treat when I finally found it and heard it, and it was better than I thought it was going to be. Like the Marlene Van Plank, you're like, some white blues singer, how good can it be?
Look at you.
And it's gorgeous. It's gorgeous. It reminds me a bit of Helen Merrill, who comes to Emersy in Chicago at the same time. Again, Chico Hamilton is on this. Gerald Wiggins, Jim Wolfe, and Howard Roberts is playing the guitar. And honestly, Polka Dots and Moonbeams is great. Easy Living is fantastic. The whole record was really enjoyable. But this Lonely One, which is what the record's called, it's why you want to listen to jazz on a cool day with a cup of cocoa.
So lonely one.
So lonely one.
Realize that your dreams are far from wise. Forget those lips you think you see. No kiss will find you mystically. Oh, you fool and fool.
This is Herbie Harper. A West Coast trombone player. Doesn't get a lot of records. He has one on Bassland that's good. Listen to this beauty. The trombone can be a very sad sounding voice. And this track is called New York Ghost. New York City Ghost. And boy, is it ever haunted. It's just the ghosts of the blues and the sound of that desolate urbanity. That's one of the things about jazz, is it doesn't ever really sound very rural. It can try to interpret pastoral, but for me, jazz always has an urban basement jazz club vibe to it. You know, so it's always very urban in how I interpret it. Bud Shank is on this. Harry Babison is on this. Marty Peisch, Roy Hart from Pacific Records is on this. I believe this was originally on the Nocturne label, which was a small subsidiary that Roy Hart from Pacific Records was a part of, affiliated with. And eventually Liberty bought out the Nocturne discography. It's only 10 or 12 LPs, and it's probably the best jazz that Liberty ever does. And it's not Liberty Sessions, it's a little label they bought out and then reissued the titles. This song is just, again, a wonderful way to relax on Labor Day. The sounds of melody with slight edges of dissonance. That's where music for me is its most rewarding. Because it can give you an edge and a feel and create a context, but it's not going to make you squint and wish you were blind in both ears. You know, Charlie Shavers, a guy that I've featured a few times lately. This is on Everest. And I honestly gotta say, I didn't realize just how beautiful that is. It's spaced so wonderfully. It's so minimal. That's the whole deal right there. That's what it's about for me, you know. Feeling. I want to feel what you're talking about. Now watch Charlie Shavers. He does some stuff on this track that Dizzy Gillespie would be like, damn, Charlie, cool it. Throughout this track and this record, Shavers is on fire. You know, I didn't realize Everest did anything besides reissue old vaults material from the blues guys and the swing era, but they absolutely do. And there's not a lot that I know of. There's an Ernie Wilkins record with the cane in the hat. There's a few others I've seen recently, but like I said, this is new material, and I don't think it lists the band. He's such a great player that so many people just don't know much about, and I'm kind of on the Charlie Shavers bandwagon. There's a few breaks on this record. He does stuff that's not human. Way up there. Way up there. this is the great Walter Davis with Donald Byrd, Jackie McLean. And Davis is kind of in the vein of Sonny Clark and Horace Silver. He leads a lot of great hard bop sessions on 5960 at Blue Note. He only gets his one record as a leader on Blue Note. But McLean's great here. Sam Jones and Art Taylor round out the lineup. But it's really Donald Byrd. When Donald Byrd comes in, I was like, oh. I had to double take a look at who it was. Because Byrd can play fire, but is usually a bit more melancholy and middle of the road in terms of his tempo, his brightness, his velocity. And Byrd comes in here with a fistful of diamonds. You know, he's excited about something. That's Walter right there. Walter does some nice stuff here. I'm going to push this along. Byrd's section's coming up here in a second. There it is. Byrd does some stuff here that I'm not really used to him playing. That sounded like Clifford for a second. I had is Lee Morgan on this too, I wondered? You know, it's pretty bright. It's pretty fiery for Donald Byrd. I don't feel like Donald Byrd spends a lot of time in the high registers much either. And he feels like he's really on something right here. Like he's got something he's on his mind. A beautiful record. One of my favorite artists of all time is Red Garland. Whoa. That's Donald Byrd. Man. Out of context, we hear Byrd very often. Red Garland, of course, played with the Miles Quintet, which is how most people are going to know him. But his side records as a trio for Prestige from the late 50s into the early 60s are some of my favorite records in the world. And he's got to be in my top 10 most listened to jazz artists. I have a lot of his records and I often play them. You know, I probably have 30 some of his records, and I'm guessing at least 20 of them get played fairly frequently. You know, especially the early Prestige 7000 series stuff. Even the late stuff is great. I just don't listen to it as much because the early stuff has better covers. I like those covers, you know. I hate jazz records with shitty album covers. And aside from CTI, jazz records have shitty album covers. Blue Note sucks in the 80s. All the fucking stuff from Europe covers are garbage. It's just sad how one of the great innovative art movements that jazz was cutting edge in graphic design in the 50s and the 60s. Jazz, the budget and the money that was set aside for jazz by the 80s, it's just not there. So they'll put a picture of a giraffe, some shitty font, make it black and white to cheapen it, and then there you go, there's your cover. And it's just consistently, and they often too will put pictures of the artists on the cover in the 80s. And unlike in the 50s, where they're wearing black suits, which never look dated, they're in some yellow pants with a striped polo shirt. The other guy's got pink and green going on, because it's 1984. And they thought they were being hip at that time, but they look like absolute clowns now. That's why when you wear a suit on your album cover in 1956, you'd still look like a clown. 60, 70 years later, you still look dignified. Look at what most of these guys are wearing in the 80s. It's almost as bad as what the funk groups were wearing. And I'm looking at you, Parliament. I'm looking at you, Earth, Wind & Fire. I'm looking at you, Cameo, running around in diapers, onesies, ball sacks hanging out the side of your lingerie. Man, R&B groups did some weird shit in the 80s. But so did hair metal. You know, it was the whole time. Leather lace, spandex. It's an okay look for Nikki Sixx. Not a great look for a bass guitar player in a jazz group. This, of course, is Summertime. And Summertime is just a jazz standard that's wonderful in any and every setting. This is, of course, the classic trio with Paul Chambers and Arthur Taylor, who most of his trio records are going to have. It's just beautiful lyricism, and as I've said umpteen times, jazz is all about lyricism. Now, a record I featured last week, Elvin Jones, in one of my album review sessions, had a track on there called Smoke Rings, and it's so gorgeous. Charlie Mariano. Woo! That's it. And he can throw in those little up-tempo lines, and then they'll revert right back to that slower tempo. Yep. Hey Jones on the piano, Roland Hanna and Richard Davis. And Hanna's only on one track, I think. But so it's basically Mariano, Hank Jones, Richard Davis, and Elvin Jones. And of course, Elvin and Hank are brothers. And so Elvin can lay down that drum, Hank can do that little tinkle, and they'll allow Richard Davis to play those bass, and Mariano just gets to do his thing. And as I said on the review of this record, Mariano is a real hidden treasure. He's a great player. His records on Bethlehem, all three of them are outstanding. All his work on Bethlehem is great, with all the side work with all those other guys. But he's playing with Mingus at Impulse at this point. He's playing with Elvin Jones at Impulse at this point. He stays on the scene well into the 90s or even the 2000s. Mariano lived for a long time. One of the greatest white sax players of all time is Charlie Mariano. One of the great sax players of all time. But again, white players come from a different place. They're emoting a different story, you know. And Mariano seems to have some real legitimate sorrow, some real empathy. And that's what this music's about. If you ain't telling me how you feel, what are you telling me? You know, what are we doing? Why are we here? Some great bass playing by Richard Davis. Fantastic. We're gonna end with this number right here. This is George Benson playing Take 5. And it's nice hearing the Paul Desmond sax part being played by guitar. And it's the groove is fun. They stake the melody wonderfully. It's got that little syncopated groove going on. You could definitely play this at any kind of event, from a picnic to a happy hour, and it would just fill people's ears with happiness and joy. Phil Upchurch also plays some guitar. Kenny Barron's on the piano. Ron Carter's on the bass. Steve Gadd is on the drums. You got a couple trumpet players here and a couple trombone players, including Garnett Brown, who I'm a big fan of. But Benson's such a great player. And of the late era guitar players from the 70s, I've heard some McLaughlin, I've heard some Metheny. Benson's the guy I've kind of connected with. It's soul, kitchen, grits and gravy, blues. It's not ever really fusion rock. It stays pretty in the pocket, pretty R&B. He's just a great player. You know, Benson's a great player. One of the greatest ever. And yet, it never feels like idle noodling. It never feels like a guy just trying to work this bizarre chord sequence in because he's so knowledgeable and he wants to inform us of how knowledgeable he is by playing the most abstract, inverted G7 minor. It never feels forced. He never feels like he's trying to manipulate me and hearing how great he is. He's just playing from his soul. He's just letting his guts tell a story. And he's a great player, without question. Technically, a very proficient guy from everything I understand about guitar. I have some limited ability on guitar, very limited. I can write songs on it. I'm not really any kind of player. I'm more of a writer. But guitar players usually demand a lot from other guitar players. You know, so it's those guys who get the Schofields and the Matheny's and the McLaughlins and just want to sing their praises all day long. I'd rather just feel some Grant Green. Tell me a story. You know, that's where I've always come from. And there was an interesting little debate going on in one of the Facebook jazz groups the other day. Grant Green, where's his place? Is he overinflated? And for me, if you don't hear Grant Green, you don't hear the blues. You know, he's telling you, again, it's not about ability. Jazz has never been about how talented you are. And if that's what you're listening for, you're listening for the wrong reasons. It's a human being connecting his soul, his experience into an instrument, relating how he feels, making himself feel better. And Grant Green does that all day long. So anyway, that's this week's Labor Day Throat Grabbers. Hope you guys enjoyed it. There was some different stuff in this episode. It wasn't really the fiery Freddie Hubbard. There was some fiery Donald Byrd in there and a few Charlie Shavers pieces. But for the most part, we were digging some of the more melancholy versions of throat grabbing. And again, when I'm listening, doing stuff, it's that moment where I go, oh, I need to look who that was. That's what I'm jotting notes down. That's what I'm making my throat grabber series on, is records that grab my attention. Especially when I wasn't even paying attention, and all of a sudden someone said, hey, hear this. I'm like, oh, who was that? Eric Dixon, who's that? You know what I mean? But you gotta know, you gotta take note. When your ears hear and feel something. And that's part of the feel process, is when a guy's telling you something that's coming from that place, if you're receptive, you're like, oh, this guy's got something to say. What's on his mind today? That's, to me, how you hear jazz. You feel it, you don't hear it. It's not about hearing. It's not about listening. It's not about dissecting the music and trying to understand the scales and the improvisation. It's just feeling. A painter doesn't want you to dissect his brush strokes. He wants you to tell him, what do you feel when you look at my work? What's this make you think of? What's it make you feel in your gut? Not what kind of canvas did you use, and is that a burnt umber or a red ochre? Let's talk about your turpentine. What kind of brushes were you using? Did you go to art school? A painter would be like, fuck you. What did the art make you think? What did it make you feel when you looked at it? Did you have a connection with it? And by golly, that's what jazz is supposed to be. It's supposed to be this art form that's so directly linked to my soul that it should be easy for you to perceive where I'm coming from and how I feel today. If you can't tell the difference between me being angry and me being romantic, you're not listening right. If you can't look at my painting and see what I'm talking about, chaos and destruction versus pastoral and beauty, either I suck at telling that story as a painter, or you are looking at the wrong things. And so I just implore people, let's try to stop being so cerebral with how we talk about jazz. And try to stop being so, oh, he's not the most technical player, and so I don't really have much respect for him because, he doesn't play G7 minor, diminished, inverted, 17th, flatted, 18th backwards rest notes. It boggles my mind at times to hear how people, and this is mostly white people, y'all, how they don't feel jazz, they hear it. And they think they're being so mature and intellectual, talking about the constructs of the music and the wonderful... Nah. Composition diminishes feel. If that's all you're hearing, why don't you go back to listening to Yes? You know what I mean? There's plenty of rock and roll out there that's progressive with all kinds of artsy changes that's not meant to make you feel something. It's meant to talk about how proficient we are as musicians. Go ahead. We don't need you. If you don't hear the blues, if you don't feel the blues, if you don't understand the churchy, gospel, soul-connecting grit that is the seed of all jazz, what are you doing? It's something I'm more convinced of all the time. I'm more passionate about it all the time. And I get so discouraged seeing so many people in the vinyl community, people debating on the Facebook groups, and it's like they never once tried to feel anything. Intellectualism and the blues don't intersect. Interpreting art isn't a cerebral exercise. It's a spiritual one. It's a your soul, your gut, emotional. It's not intellectual. It's emotional and spiritual. And so shut your brain off. Quit looking for the fantastic brilliance. Because true jazz players are never trying to show you how brilliant they are. They're trying to tell you something. And if you'd get off your damn high horse for a minute, you'd recognize that they were speaking about his tyranny and pain and sorrow and poverty and oppression and fear, anxiety, exhaustion. If LeBron James could talk about the exhaustion of being a black male in 2020, how do you think 1945 felt? How do you think 1936 felt? Ben Webster can tell you, but it's not technical enough for me. No, I like it to be very complex. It's posturing. It's posturing. And I can't have dialogue with those people. You know, you come from such a different place. And it's the same as a car club that enjoys the joy of driving, and this one guy just wants to talk about the transmission. It's like, no, we're talking about the joy of taking a corner at 60 and the thrill of this mountain highway, the experience, the invigoration, the adrenaline of driving. We're not here to talk about anti-lock brakes. We don't care about what kind of oil you use. That's not what we're here to discuss. We're discussing the emotional, spiritual experience of what this driving does for me. And I just need to get that into people's heads as much as I can. And again, it comes from the critics today. It comes from a lot of the people who write. They want to be intellectual and sound like they understand it. I'm so intellectual, I can understand what Mingus was trying to say. Did you once open up your heart and try to feel what he was telling you? I think we would all get so much more from music in general, but jazz especially, if we shut this off and turned our hearts on and said, you know what? Tell me how you feel. I want to be an open door to what you're feeling. Because that's really what you're trying to tell me. And anybody who's trying to tell you how proficient they are as a musician isn't a jazz player. Sorry. They're not. Jazz is so rooted in the blues. The second it stops becoming about what I feel, it starts to be driven by ego. And look at how great I am. Diminished sixteenths at 120 BPMs. Proficient. I'd rather listen to Grant Green play them single line notes telling me about how good the potato salad was at church last Sunday than to hear for 3 seconds of some asshole. This is how great I am. Go sit down, young man. Got no time for that. Got no time for that. And if you're dissecting jazz from an intellectual place, you missing the entire message. That's my sermon for today. You don't gotta like it. You don't gotta love it. But I'll guarantee the only people who disagree with me here are gonna be some white cerebral ass motherfuckers. And gonna be a brother out there going, oh no, this music isn't about feeling. In fact, for the most part, the only people who ever have any issue with what I say are cerebral white motherfuckers. Or racist. Racists don't like what I say either when I point a finger at America for the tyranny. They all sometimes have an issue with what I'm saying. Never had a brother once message me and go, dude, you don't know what you're talking about. Because I've seen the oppression firsthand. As a DJ, it's affected me firsthand, working for them, having their events canceled, moved. It's still a part of their daily experience. And I'd be outraged by what happened to them, and they'd be so used to it that they would just call me and be like, well, I guess we could go here instead. Because they're so used to living under the thumb of tyranny. And they don't want to talk about it. They don't want to give it power by addressing it and ruining the good time they're trying to have. They want to forget about it right now. They know it's real, but they don't want to sit here tonight while I'm celebrating my birthday and talk about race and oppression. And as a white guy who's a witness to it, I gotta say something. Hey, man, 400 years, not shit's changed. We should do better. We can do better. And if I have my say, we will do better. Y'all enjoy your Labor Days. Be safe out there. I can't wait to start DJing again. I miss it. I miss connecting with a room full of people playing music that makes them feel something. I miss it. I haven't DJed since early March. You know, I'm thank God for this channel. It gives me a chance to communicate with people and still express my soul. But I miss that human interaction and making people get excited about music. That's what a good DJ should do. A good DJ isn't just there to entertain you. He's there to make you have a good time. And music can excite. Music can be riveting. It can be edge of your seat excitement. But it's never that when you're cerebrally dissecting it. It's just, I can't imagine missing the joys of driving a Porsche on the Autobahn by sitting there trying to break down the suspension. Turn off the brain. Feel, think, heart, emotion, spirit, peace.